Most men believe that when they walk away from a woman, the story simply ends. They assume she moves on instantly and forgets about them. But the reality is much more complicated. Because when a man walks away calmly instead of chasing, something subtle begins inside her mind, something the ancient Stoics understood deeply. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself that the strongest man is not the one who forces people to stay, but the one who keeps his dignity when it is time to let go. And this is exactly what walking away represents. It signals emotional control, self-respect, and inner stability, qualities that are surprisingly rare in modern relationships. Because most people react emotionally when things begin to fall apart. They argue, they try to convince. They send long messages explaining themselves. And sometimes they even beg for another chance. But when a man does the opposite and quietly removes himself from the situation, it creates psychological tension. Because the human mind expects predictable reactions, she expects resistance. She expects emotional chaos. She expects to see that she still has power over your emotions. But when none of that appears, something unusual happens. Uncertainty enters the situation. And uncertainty is one of the strongest emotional triggers in human psychology. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus explained that people are not disturbed by events themselves, but by the meaning they attach to those events. And when you walk away without drama, the meaning becomes unclear. She cannot easily understand what just happened, so her mind begins searching for answers. At first, she may feel a brief sense of relief, because tension disappears when someone who cared deeply stops pushing. The silence can feel peaceful for a moment, but silence does something powerful. It creates space, and space invites reflection. As time passes, small questions begin appearing in her thoughts. Why did he walk away so calmly? Why didn't he try harder? Why does he seem unaffected? And the moment these questions begin, the emotional dynamic shifts. Because now the focus is no longer you trying to prove your worth. Now she is thinking about you. And attention is one of the strongest emotional forces that exists. When someone occupies space in our thoughts, their presence slowly grows even if they are physically absent. This is why absence can sometimes feel louder than presence. When you are always there, your effort may have seemed normal and predictable. But once it disappears, the mind suddenly notices the gap you left behind. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that true power comes from mastering one's reactions rather than trying to control others. And when a woman sees that you did not react with desperation, she begins to see you differently. She may not say it out loud, but somewhere in her mind, a quiet curiosity begins forming. Because emotional discipline is rare, and rare qualities naturally attract attention. Memories begin resurfacing, conversations, moments of calm, the way you handled situations differently from others. And slowly the story she once believed about you begins to shift. Because a man who walks away peacefully does not fit the image of someone weak or dependent. Instead, he begins to appear emotionally grounded and self-controlled. And this quiet strength can disturb expectations. Because most people are used to dramatic endings, arguments, emotional explosions. But when someone leaves without creating chaos, it leaves behind unanswered questions. And unanswered questions have a strange power over the human mind. They keep returning again and again during quiet moments. And this is where the real emotional process begins. Because once curiosity enters the picture, another emotion slowly starts growing behind it. An emotion that arrives quietly but becomes heavier over time: regret. Lesson 1. Immediately after someone walks away, it grows slowly as the silence begins to settle. Because in the beginning, the absence of a person can feel calm. especially if the relationship had tension or emotional misunderstandings. The quiet can feel like relief at first, like a break from pressure. But human emotions evolve as the mind begins reflecting on what truly happened. And this is where regret quietly begins to form. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once warned that people often fail to recognize the value of something while it is present in their lives, only realizing its importance once it disappears. And relationships often follow this exact pattern. When someone is consistently present, their effort becomes familiar. And familiarity can sometimes make things invisible. Stability feels ordinary while it exists. It does not feel dramatic or exciting. It simply feels normal. But the moment that stability disappears, comparison begins. And comparison is where regret quietly grows. She may start noticing the difference between what she once had and what she experiences afterward. Conversations with others may feel shallow compared to the depth you once brought. Emotional reactions from other people may feel chaotic compared to the calm presence you offered. And these small comparisons slowly create a shift in perception. Memories that once seemed ordinary begin carrying more emotional weight. She may remember the patience you showed during difficult conversations, the times you tried to understand rather than argue, the moments when you remained calm while others would have reacted emotionally. And the more these memories return, the stronger the contrast becomes, because absence magnifies what once existed. The human mind constantly tries to make sense of past decisions, especially when those decisions lead to loss. So her thoughts may begin replaying certain moments again and again, small arguments, misunderstandings, or times when emotions clouded judgment. And as the mind revisits those memories, a new question slowly begins forming. Did I take him for granted? That question can be powerful because it introduces doubt where certainty once existed. And doubt opens the door to deeper reflection. Marcus Aurelius believed that a person should act with integrity, so that when situations end, they carry no shame or regret within themselves. And this is one of the quiet strengths of walking away with dignity. Because when you leave without bitterness, you protect your own peace. But your calm departure can create a mirror that forces the other person to reflect on their actions. She may start noticing the absence of the small things you once did, the emotional stability you brought into her life, the sense of reliability that once felt ordinary but now feels rare. And these realizations do not appear all at once. They grow slowly during quiet evenings, during conversations with friends, during moments when she suddenly remembers something you once said. And the deeper those realizations become, the heavier regret can start to feel. Because regret is not only about losing someone, it is about recognizing the value of that person after they are already gone. And that realization can stay in the mind longer than people expect. Lesson 2. After the initial silence settles and regret begins quietly forming in the background of her mind, another emotion slowly starts rising to the surface: curiosity. And curiosity can be surprisingly powerful because the human mind is naturally drawn toward what it cannot fully understand. When someone behaves in a predictable way, the brain quickly loses interest because everything feels familiar and easy to explain. But when someone behaves in an unexpected way, the mind begins searching for answers. And this is exactly what happens when a man stops chasing and calmly walks away. Because most people expect emotional reactions when a relationship begins to fade. They expect arguments, attempts to fix things, emotional explanations, and sometimes even desperation. These reactions are common and therefore easy to categorize. But when none of those reactions appear, the brain becomes unsettled. She may begin asking herself questions she did not consider before. Why did he not fight harder for this? Why did he not react the way most men do? Why did he seem so calm when things ended? And the moment those questions appear, curiosity begins doing its work. Because curiosity forces the mind to revisit memories and search for meaning. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said that a wise person focuses on controlling their own behavior rather than trying to control how others respond. And when you walk away with emotional discipline, you demonstrate exactly that principle. You show that your actions are guided by self-respect rather than emotional dependency. And that quiet independence can create a powerful psychological effect. Because many people are used to relationships where emotional reactions dominate everything. So when someone breaks that pattern, it becomes difficult to ignore. She may begin replaying moments from the relationship in her mind, small conversations, shared experiences, times when you remained calm during tension. And slowly those memories begin to stand out differently than they did before. Because now they are viewed through the lens of absence. The mind begins comparing your behavior with the behavior of others she encounters afterward. And comparison often reveals qualities that once seemed invisible. She may start noticing how rare emotional stability actually is, how uncommon it is to meet someone who does not react impulsively during conflict. And these realizations can quietly reshape the way she remembers you. Because instead of focusing only on the reasons the relationship ended, she begins noticing the qualities that made you different. Your patience, your composure, your refusal to chase attention. And curiosity continues growing because unanswered questions rarely disappear easily. They tend to return during quiet moments, late at night, or during conversations where your name unexpectedly comes up. The mind naturally tries to resolve unfinished emotional stories. And when someone walks away without creating drama, the story feels incomplete. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the idea that true strength lies in remaining steady regardless of external circumstances. And when a woman realizes that you maintained your composure, even while leaving the relationship, it creates a quiet sense of intrigue. Because composure signals inner strength. And inner strength is something people instinctively respect, even when they do not openly admit it. This is why curiosity can slowly deepen her attention toward you, even after you have physically stepped away. Because the mind wants to understand what it cannot easily explain. And the more she reflects on your calm departure, the more one thought may begin appearing quietly in her mind. Maybe he was stronger than I realized. Lesson 3. As curiosity grows and memories begin resurfacing, another emotion can slowly emerge beneath the surface: fear. But not the loud, dramatic kind of fear people often imagine. This is a quieter and more reflective kind of fear. The fear that she may have lost someone who was genuinely rare. Because once the mind begins comparing past experiences with present reality, certain qualities become difficult to ignore. Emotional stability, patience, calm communication, and self-respect are not as common as many people assume. And when someone who possessed those qualities walks away, the absence can gradually reveal their true value. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once observed that people rarely recognize the importance of something until it is no longer within reach. And relationships often reflect this truth. When someone is consistently present, their qualities can blend into everyday life. They feel normal rather than exceptional. But the moment that presence disappears, perspective changes. Because now those same qualities must be measured against what comes afterward. She may notice that conversations with others feel different. That emotional maturity is harder to find than she expected. And these realizations can quietly lead to a deeper concern. What if I let go of someone who was actually good for me? This thought can be uncomfortable because it challenges the certainty she once had about the decision. And uncertainty often leads to reflection. The mind begins reviewing the past more carefully, looking at moments that once seemed small but now appear meaningful. She may remember the way you handled disagreements calmly, the way you tried to understand rather than react, the way you respected yourself enough not to remain in a situation where your value was not fully recognized. And these memories can create a growing awareness that something important may have been lost. Marcus Aurelius believed that self-respect should never be sacrificed in order to hold onto someone else's approval, because a person who abandons their dignity ultimately loses themselves. And when a woman sees that you chose dignity over desperation, it can quietly reshape the way she views you, because walking away without bitterness shows emotional maturity. It shows that your identity does not depend on convincing someone to stay. And this realization can introduce a deeper emotional concern, the fear that someone with those qualities may not return once they have chosen to leave. Because people who value their dignity rarely go back to situations that required them to abandon it. And this awareness can create a subtle emotional tension, because the mind begins imagining what life might have been like if things had unfolded differently, if misunderstandings had been resolved, if appreciation had come earlier. And the more these thoughts develop, the clearer one realization becomes. Rare people are not easily replaced. And when someone begins to understand that truth, the emotional weight of losing them can grow heavier than expected. Lesson 4. When regret, curiosity, and the quiet fear of losing something rare have already passed through her mind, the final emotion that often appears is something far deeper: respect. Because respect is not created by chasing someone or convincing them to stay. Respect is created when a person demonstrates that they value themselves enough to walk away from a situation that no longer aligns with their dignity. And this is one of the most powerful lessons the Stoic philosophers tried to teach. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that a man should never compromise his character simply to gain the approval of others, because approval is temporary but self-respect is permanent. And when a woman sees that you chose self-respect instead of emotional desperation, something shifts in the way she perceives you. Because most people have witnessed the opposite many times before. They have seen men who argue endlessly, men who try to prove their worth, men who sacrifice their pride in order to remain in someone's life. And while those reactions may come from genuine emotions, they often reduce the sense of respect within the relationship. Because when someone appears emotionally dependent, their value begins to feel less stable. But when a man calmly walks away, he sends a completely different message. He communicates that his identity is not built around someone else's validation. He shows that his peace is something he protects rather than negotiates. And that kind of quiet strength can change the emotional dynamic entirely. Because respect grows naturally when someone demonstrates boundaries. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that we should never give others control over our inner state. Because once our peace depends on external approval, we lose our freedom. And when you walk away with composure, you demonstrate that your emotional stability does not depend on another person's choices. This realization can slowly reshape the way she remembers you. Because the image of someone who leaves with dignity is difficult to ignore, she may begin noticing that many people around her struggle to maintain emotional balance during conflict. That calm self-control is far rarer than she previously believed. And these observations can strengthen the respect she feels for the way you handled the situation. Because respect is often born not during the relationship itself, but in the moments after it ends. When distance allows people to see things more clearly, memories become less emotional and more reflective. And in that reflection, certain qualities stand out. The patience you once showed, the emotional stability you maintained, the quiet confidence that allowed you to step away instead of losing yourself in arguments. And these qualities can gradually redefine the way she views the entire experience. Because instead of remembering only the conflict, she may begin recognizing the strength you demonstrated in the way you left. And strength that is shown through restraint often leaves a deeper impression than strength shown through force. Marcus Aurelius believed that a person's true character is revealed in how they respond to difficulty, not in how they behave when everything is easy. And walking away peacefully from a relationship that no longer respects your value is one of the clearest demonstrations of that principle, because it requires discipline, emotional control, and the courage to accept uncertainty rather than clinging to something that no longer serves your growth. And when a woman reflects on that kind of decision, she may begin to see you not as someone who disappeared, but as someone who chose himself, someone who understood his worth well enough to protect it. And that realization can leave a lasting impression long after the relationship itself has ended. Because while attraction may fade and emotions may change, respect has a way of remaining in memory, quietly shaping the way people think about the choices they once made. And this is the final truth the Stoics tried to teach. When a man masters his emotions and protects his dignity, he does not simply walk away from a situation. He leaves behind an example of what self-respect truly looks like. And this is the truth many people only understand after it is too late. The moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop trying to convince someone to see your worth, and the moment you quietly choose your dignity over temporary attention, something powerful begins to change, not only in the way others see you, but also in the way you see yourself. The Stoic philosophers often reminded us that a man who cannot control his emotions will always become a prisoner of other people's decisions. But the man who learns to master his reactions becomes truly free. Walking away is not about pride. It is not about ego, and it is certainly not about punishing someone. It is about protecting the one thing that defines your character, your self-respect. Aurelius once reflected that we must never allow the behavior of others to pull us away from our own principles. Because the moment we abandon our values just to keep someone in our life, we lose something far more important than the relationship itself. We lose ourselves. And that is the deeper lesson hidden behind every moment of walking away. When you leave calmly, without bitterness and without desperation, you are showing the world that your peace is not something that can be negotiated or taken away by anyone. You are choosing growth over attachment, strength over emotional chaos, and clarity over confusion. People spend years trying to gain validation from others, trying to prove they are worthy of attention, love, or respect. But the Stoics believed the opposite path leads to true strength. They believed that respect begins the moment you stop seeking approval and start living according to your own standards. When you walk away with dignity, you are not losing. You are demonstrating that your identity is built on something deeper than another person's decision. And ironically, this quiet strength often leaves a stronger impression than any argument or emotional reaction ever could. Sometimes the greatest power a person can show is the ability to step back and say nothing, to allow silence to speak for them, to move forward without resentment while keeping their character intact. Because in the end, life always reveals the difference between those who chase attention and those who carry themselves with quiet confidence. The Stoics understood that true strength is calm, controlled, and unwavering. And the man who learns this lesson becomes someone who cannot easily be shaken by circumstances or by the opinions of others. Remember this: walking away with dignity is not the end of your story. It is often the beginning of a stronger version of yourself. It is the moment you reclaim your focus, your energy, and your direction. And if this message resonated with you, if you believe that self-respect must always come before validation, then comment dignity first below. Subscribe to Stoic Spark and press the bell icon so you never miss the next lesson on Stoic wisdom, emotional mastery, and the quiet power of becoming a man who truly controls his